Good evening, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Transforming with V. This is a episode that I'm very excited about. We are talking about grief, but before we get into it, we want to go ahead and make sure that you're subscribed to V Bailey Network as well as our friends at the HBCU Lounge Network. And also go ahead and click the share button, share it with one of your friends, all of your friends, family members, because tonight's conversation is going to be full of valuable information. So now that we've got that out of the way, I would love to introduce our guest this evening. She is no stranger to the show. She's been on a few times now. So welcome, Miss Sierra Hillsman.
Hey y'all, thank you so much, V, for having me. I'm super excited to see the transformation that's about to occur amongst your audience. So thank you so much for having me. Like you mentioned, I am no stranger to any of your platforms. And so it's just going to be another conversation like friends and family.
That's right. That's right. It's a sister to the show, sister and friend to the show. Yes. And so this topic is a conversation that I wanted to discuss just because of how important it is. But a lot of people may not know too much about grief. Or, for instance, when they think about grief, they think only one thing, like grieving because of loss of, a loved one. But I wanted us to, kind of talk about it since this is something that you specialize in. Before we just jump right into it, if you could not really introduce yourself, for the people who don't know who you are and they are new to the show, if you could tell them a little bit of your background and what it is you specialize in, and how you got into this field.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra Hillsman. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia, also licensed in the state of Maryland as well. I'm a certified clinical trauma professional and a certified anger management specialist. All that means is I have a whole bunch of letters behind my name. I'm the founder of Legacy Speaks, which is a premier training and development firm dedicated to helping working professionals overcome any related stressors so that they can live fulfilling lives. But as a clinical professional, the things that I specialize in is work-life harmony, life transitions, and also dealing with trauma as well. Anytime I talk about the concept of life transitions, I'm always incorporating that concept of grief, because we understand when we're grieving, we're not just focusing on like the loss of a person, but sometimes we're also dealing with like the loss of our pieces of ourselves, loss of opportunity, loss of like things that we wish could have happened, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And so thank you so much for creating space on your platform to talk about the mental health components of grieving, or maybe even for anybody who's dealing with a life transition.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, when I think about I don't want to jump ahead, but just that piece that it isn't just loss of a person. And thanks for mentioning all those different areas. And then obviously there's so many other areas that people are grieving and don't realize that they're kind of stuck in this place where they need to grieve but haven't. So thank you for that. So let's talk about grief. For those who don't know what it is, I mean, hey, there's still more that I can know about grief. What is grief, and what does it mean, to grieve, and grief counseling? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about the concept of grief, it is one's physical, mental, emotional, and also spiritual relationship to the loss of a particular thing. And it's important for us to look at the concept of grief in relation to things like mourning and bereavement. So bereavement is that time after the loss. Mourning is the outward expression. I always like to explain it kind of like the traditions that we typically see within a socio-cultural perspective. That looks like if you are a native to Louisiana, or if you find yourself in New Orleans, that second line procession after a funeral, or maybe even wearing all black to a specific homegoing service, or maybe even sometimes like the cultural aspects of leaving things on an altar for somebody, or maybe even having those celebrations like a repast. So thinking about how we outwardly express the
Mm.
loss. But even with grief, is like we talked about, the mental, emotional, physical, and sometimes spiritual relationship to that particular loss as well. How does that impact you? How does that show up in your day-to-day living? How does that show up in your concept of self? Usually when we're thinking about grief, people automatically go to the normal foundations of grief, like understanding that there are 5 stages of grief. One, dealing with like that anger or maybe
Mm.
even shock. Then you're also dealing with that bargaining where people are like, why me? Why did this have to happen? The shoulda, coulda, wouldas. If I would have done this, then maybe this person would still be here, or maybe this opportunity would still be here. You also have the stage of depression where you're dealing with like that complex sadness, or
Mm.
dealing with the emotional component of clinical depression, or maybe even just depressed like symptoms. When we're looking at those types of symptoms, that includes intense crying or frequent crying, maybe even loss of activities of daily living. So struggling to feed yourself, clothe yourself, loss of appetite, changes in appetite. Maybe you're eating more to cope with those emotions. Also looking at like racing thoughts, irritability, withdrawn, isolated, things like that. And then slowly transitioning into the place of acceptance is where we're finding meaning. This is when we're able to look at like, man, this sucks. This really does, like the loss of this opportunity, loss of this person, or the loss of this sense of self. It
Right.
really is changing the way that I view life in a whole. But how can I turn this into an opportunity of learning? How can I turn this as an opportunity to make meaning of this thing? How does this shift me forward? How does this motivate me? How does this inspire me? What lessons can I learn from this scenario? So just navigating through all of those different stages.
No, and that's so good because there are so many, and so well in those situations, I'm sure you can easily get kind of confused of what is happening, with you at that time. Like, how do you know that you're actually grieving, doing the grieving, or if you're just depressed, just
Yeah.
stuck, stuck there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we understand that depression, what like I said, whether it's clinical or maybe just the symptoms, is a part of the particular stage.
Mm.
So like we talked about, it depends on the anytime we're thinking about any type of diagnosis, and I'm really putting this out there because sometimes we like to look for a label for a thing,
Yeah, yeah,
looking
yeah.
at like the actual like experience, the human experience. So
Mhm.
let's take the label off really quickly.
Okay.
Like even when we're talking about like that intense sadness, what are the other symptoms, or what are the other things that you're currently experiencing along with the sadness? And then we're also looking at level of intensity, and we're also looking at length of time. We can also see this too with individuals who are dealing with complex grief, right? So imagine losing your job, your parent just passed away, and maybe even you are also going through a divorce. So those multiple losses that are compounding over time, especially for an individual who might not have had the opportunity to properly grieve the last thing. I came
Right.
across a person who had lost 3 family members in less than a year. And so
Mm.
that, you understand that life really does life, and
Right.
there
That's
are
good.
a number of things that we can expect, but it's important for us to have the language for what we're currently experiencing so that we can know how to take care of ourselves in these moments.
That is so true. Yeah, I mean, when things start piling up, it's. I mean, even me, I'm known to give advice, but sometimes, stuff gets so crazy that you're just like, I'll be right back. I
Right.
need to go ask God. I should have prepared, a little bit better before I came,
My
you
goodness.
know, but you don't even know what to say. You're just like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to pray about it, like just pray about it, and not in the sense that we're just like, okay, pray about everything's better now. No, but pray about it and just kind of give it all to God,
Yeah.
because sometimes, when life is life and it's so difficult and you really don't know what you're going to do, you don't know the next thing. Sometimes you're just like, I'm just here,
Yeah.
and so, um, it's so important. What you're saying is like the language and just kind of like the experience, allow yourself to feel it. And that's the thing, is when you had talked about grief that one day, and I was just like, told you, I was just like really actually stuck in that moment, because I'm like, wait, hold on. Why haven't I never really even thought about this or heard this way, or just heard anyone talk about grief the way that you did? And I'm just like, that is it. You know, a lot of times we're talking about trauma, and I hate that it gets to the point where something comes up and it becomes like I guess trendy, you know, and then and then everybody's talking about it, and then it becomes cliche, and then the importance is kind of lost, right? But with the whole thing with trauma, it's like, okay, so trauma, you know, we're still going through these things, you know, and reacting a certain way, and sometimes being toxic because we have this trauma that we haven't healed from.
Yeah.
But if we allowed ourselves or really understood grief, then we could grieve these things, all these things, you know, whether it is loss of a job, loss of a person, a loved one, loss of just having to come to terms with something that it's just not going to happen. I am not going to the league, you know, maybe not this league, you know, like maybe not the basketball league, but maybe I'm gonna do something else. But this league, the basketball league, it's not going to happen for me, you know, because at some point we do have to come to terms with certain things that maybe we thought we wanted to do, or we really, you know, wanted to do. It wasn't what we needed or wasn't good for us. So yeah, so that's why I thought that this conversation, you know, would be so important, is because of that understanding of grief, you know, and properly grieving these different areas could really set us free.
Yeah. There's so many different points that you touched on. So my hope is that my memory won't fail me. But immediately I think about recognizing that grief is not linear. So we can find ourselves in a place of acceptance and finding meaning, and then also going back and dealing with some level of anger, or maybe even some intense sadness, even as we are recounting situations. And so for anybody who is going through the grief cycle, or maybe has felt like they should have done better, or they should be past this feeling, understand that like you are human, and we can be in a place of acceptance and still find ourselves in these different stages of grief. The other thing to consider, like you mentioned, is just like finding out or figuring out what's in your toolkit that you can leverage to help you move through these various stages. So even when we're talking about the concept of spirituality, right? Scripture says in the Matthew chapter 5 that blessed are those who are mourning, for they shall be comforted. So understanding that you are not alone in this grief process, understand that the Lord sees you and he hears your cries. As a matter of fact, he gives you the comforter, which is Holy Spirit, to help you navigate these things. And he's also not intimidated by your emotions or your questions. I think even that stage of grappling, we often hear this concept of like, why me? Why God? Or God, if you love me, why would you take this person away from me? We have so many why questions that we may never get the answer to. But if we just practice relentless honesty and also radical acceptance, which are two key components, relentless honesty about our emotions rather than trying to suppress it. Because, you know, us power women and also like men of ambition, we will have a tendency of diving headfirst into our work and not give ourselves the opportunity to process our emotions.
Yeah.
So
True.
practicing radical honesty about how you're feeling about this scenario, and literally having a conversation with God, like, Lord, what the heck is going on? And so just seeking the face of the Lord, but also giving yourself an opportunity to be human throughout this entire process. And even when we're talking about a radical acceptance, understanding that a situation, it is what it is. We may not agree with it. We may not fall in alignment with it. However, we have no control over what happens. We have control over how we respond to it. So
Yes.
yes, your feelings are valid, but please don't allow your feelings to consume you. Give yourself the space to process your emotions in a true, authentic way. And we could do this in various ways, whether it's through journaling, whether it's going to counseling, whether
Mhm.
it's asking a friend or going to grief share, finding support groups that help you to acknowledge your pain. Uh,
Yeah.
Also making sure that you're leveraging other tools like stretching, exercise, those outlets that are going to allow you to be able to, one, emote, two, feel in your body, because our
Yeah.
body stores our emotions. Okay, the
Mhm.
body keeps the score. And so
That's
allowing your body to be able to effectively adjust and to acknowledge how this grief is being stored up as well. So
it's
increasing awareness in various areas too.
yeah. No, that's so good. Oh my goodness. Everything you said. It's so good and so important, just saying, you know what? I'm going to feel all this and I'm going to process it. I'm going to take that time. Maybe I do need to take a day or two, just to process how I feel and mourn and get it all out. Maybe you might need to cry. You might need to cry all night. Sometimes, like for me, I'm not a big crier, but when I have and really like allow myself to cry, whatever the reason, even if it wasn't something that I really thought about, um, it was so helpful. I felt like,
Mm,
ooh, like I was like exhaling, like I just got it all out. And two, what you were stating about like acknowledging like how you feel, but I was thinking about just speaking out of how you feel, because sometimes you hold on to things for so long, and depending on your upbringing,
mm,
a lot of us grew up with that, just ignore these things, sweep this under the rug, don't hold this grudge. But it's just like, well, maybe you could not hold a grudge. I'm not really a grudge holder, but like maybe you could not like bring it up or harp on it if you could
mm,
actually talk about it and your feelings be validated, right? So
mm.
there's so many of us, that grew up without that kind of validation. And it's not that your parents were doing it intentionally or anything like that. You can have great parents, but sometimes it's that hustle and bustle. Like our parents, the same thing, they're doing their thing to take care of us. And sometimes they don't get to stop. I feel like that's the American way, it's just go, 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 go. And a lot of times we miss out on some of the important things or catching certain things because we're on the go and we don't
Absolutely.
take that time. So that makes grieving hard too, because it's a culture of not slowing down and like being present, so
Yeah.
um, yeah, those are the things. It's like it's okay, and have some some healthy people around you to tell you it's okay. Like I know it's hard for you to allow yourself to just feel it, get a day
Yeah.
off. We need
Oh,
it.
thank you for acknowledging that component, the socioeconomic component. I remember when I was working at my last agency, I literally had a client tell me, there are certain things that I want to talk about, but I can't talk about it because if I talk about it, who's going to put me back together when you're not here?
Yeah.
And it's the truth. Like there are times, or there is a class of us who
Hmm.
feel like we can't talk about certain things because one, we have so many different responsibilities, right? For the single parent, I got to
Uh-huh.
keep it together for my kids because I still got to be able to go to work and function.
Right.
For the leader who literally has a whole team on their back, listen, we got projects and deadlines. We got a major thing to execute. I don't got time to think about what
Right.
I'm feeling in this moment. And so, like you mentioned, there is a difficulty in creating space for our emotions because sometimes our schedule doesn't even allot it. I think that's when we start to have a conversation about wellness and prioritizing self and really looking at the way that we allocate our time and steward our time,
Right.
because we do make time for what we actually want. I always tell this to clients, like you can't take care of the we if you don't take care of the I. So for the people that are depending on you, they need you to be healed. They need you to emote. They need you to have a healthy relationship with your emotions so that you can show up as your best self and to be able to go forth and do whatever it is that you're called to do.
Absolutely. Yep. That is so true. It's so true. It's like, we got to do it, so hope we're with the whole mental health and how that is becoming more of a priority and more accepted. I hope that what's next is the self-love component and, prioritizing yourself because that a lot of times is the reason that we have to go, do a checkup for our mental health or restore it, because we're not prioritizing ourselves, or we haven't gotten permission to do that. A lot of times we're waiting on the permission, and it's just like, baby, you're always a priority.
That's so good. We're waiting on the permission. That's so good.
Yeah. So my next thing, I guess we kind of talked about it, but just in case there are any other ones, and I'm sure you probably have tons, what are some of the misconceptions about grief?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, individuals have this belief that we just gonna cycle on through all the cycles and be a-okay, but also remembering that grief is not linear. You can find yourself in one place and then having to backtrack in another place as well. Also, too, there's this misconception that grief is isolated. I think with any mental health concern, like whatever happens in one area, it has a tendency of bleeding into other areas. So one of my favorite quotes by Sigmund Freud, it talks about unaddressed emotions show up in various ways. And so this is why we're always emphasizing making sure that you are creating space for you to, one, identify your emotions, two, acknowledge them, and three, process them. And these are three different things, right? I know sometimes we utilize these terms interchangeably, but it's important for us to take the time to identify how we truly feel, because oftentimes with my clients, they'll say, it made me feel some type of way, or like I felt this, or like, and then something happened. It's just like, what is that something? What is that type of way?
Yeah, like
wanting to pull out the feelings like, we need to identify how we're actually feeling. Let's give language to what it is that we are feeling, because we'll just settle for the vague. And when we settle for the vague, we're not truly putting a name to it. So one, identifying, acknowledging that it exists, right? So oftentimes what I find is we have a tendency of trying to like compartmentalize. Anytime we start to feel a little tear rise up, or that lip getting ready to get there.
Like, no, we won't do it. We won't do it.
Let's push this thing down. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So acknowledge your feelings in the room. They're not something to be be afraid of. They're not something to avoid. They're not something to put in the back of the closet, never to be seen again. So please acknowledge that they actually exist. Interestingly enough, we have a way of acknowledging our pain, but we won't acknowledge how we actually feel. We won't acknowledge the joy or the appreciation or the happiness. Our brain is wired to protect us from any threat. So even when you're thinking about that concept of grief, right, immediately you're dealing with that anger, that shock, right? But then we have an opportunity to be able to usher in like healthy memories with the person, or maybe even a life lessons that we were able to garner from that job loss, or whatever the case may be. The other thing to consider too, like we talked about, identifying, acknowledging, but also processing. So giving yourself the opportunity to be able to sort through those emotions and those thoughts, figuring out next steps, also seeing how this might have shown up in other areas of your life too, right? So if you probably lost a grandparent, and maybe this is your first time losing somebody that's like super close to you, is there somebody within your social network, whether it's like a close friend or another family member, who could provide wisdom and wise counsel for how they were able to navigate their own experiences with loss? Maybe this is your first time losing a particular opportunity. Maybe you can look back at how you've experienced loss in other ways, how you were able to work through that.
Right.
And literally just copy and paste.
Well, do you think so? Are you saying that that's something that people misconceive is just like that they're going to be able to just process these things and roll with it. Like, okay, this happened, and I'll be good, and then they just don't really like understand how this situation is going to impact them
Yeah.
when they're grieving,
And granted, I really want to tread lightly with saying that it's going to be like that, because everybody handles grief differently, right? There are some people that are just like, you know what?
Right.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But on average, it is important for us to create space for us to acknowledge, identify, and also process our emotions, so that we can be able to know what's next steps, and so that we can move forward with functionality as well. That's very important.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think that with the misconception, obviously, the biggest one is that, like it only applies to, a death, but maybe even I wonder this, if, that's just a misconception, is that, like maybe like, what's the point, or like not understanding that you can come out better on the other side, because I guess if you don't really understand it, or, the process, the stages, then you wouldn't realize how valuable it could be. Maybe that's a misconception, of going through that, process. With grief, I don't know. I really want that to be something that's more promoted, but at the same time, it's not really desirable, because, it's painful, processing your emotions. It is. Listen, I am working on this book and finishing it up. And when I tell you, writing these things out and like being present with emotions that I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
And then, trying to just grieve the areas that I feel like I have been stuck on, something that comes up over the years and has, come up over the years. I mean, saying, okay, I think I need to do something with this, because this can't, keep coming up, and it can't be affecting my emotions of how I move forward. And so that process is hard, and it's kind of ugly, and I'm just like, I don't want any more, like I just want to go and do something that I want to do, not this. So yeah, I definitely just
I think that's like a misconception for healing in general. I think because of the way social media has made healing so trendy, there's this expectation that we're just going to do our affirmations and our meditations,
right,
and everything's going to be okay. But growth is messy. I mean, like, even when we're thinking about, if for all my plant mamas and daddies out there, like anytime like we are tending to a growing plant, we're having to like dig our hand in the soil and like remove it from the pot and replant it, resoil it. Like, that process is dirty, it's messy. Even when we go to the gym and we're working out and we're building muscle, the only way that you can build muscle is by first tearing it and allowing it to heal.
right.
So anytime we are operating in a space of growth, understand that it's going to get uncomfortable. It's going to hurt. But we can leverage tools of resiliency, like your spirituality, your social support, your sense of purpose, volunteerism, like all of those things, to be able to help you navigate getting on the other side of this thing.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. It's messy, y'all. It's messy, but it's so much better, just after, and you feel lighter. Like, that's something that I feel like has been happening, is just feeling lighter. I mean, I have a pretty upbeat personality, and I like to stay there, but if you're not careful, like, these things just start piling up, and then you before you know it, you just like, oh, this ain't even mine. This ain't even my stuff. So, but
I think also too, like, remembering that it's a continuous process, right? So I'm pretty sure for anybody who's like listening to this, like you probably experienced a loss probably like 5, 10, 15 years ago, and like something just reprompts a memory of that situation, and you're looking at it from a different perspective, from a different lens. You're
Yes.
revisiting that same moment, based upon your level of maturity, based upon the other experience that you've had following afterward. I know for me, there are times where I remember the advice that I was given in relation to that scenario. And it's just like, sometimes you're like, man, you know what, that was really good. Or other times it was like, why did I even listen to you? Right. But you just have, you're constantly going to revisit the moment from a different perspective. And so give yourself grace and patience throughout that journey as well. It's all about, all a part of the human experience.
Right. Yeah. And it is. It's like as you are healing bit by bit, because that's the thing is like, people say, oh, I'm on my healing journey. It's like, well, that's forever. That is like your life until you clock out, like you check out of here, like you will be doing that, hopefully, but that process is ongoing. So it's so good. I'm glad that you actually highlighted that. Because sometimes we get on these journeys and we think that, okay, I'm going to do this. And then like, it's all good. Like I'm perfect now. Like, or it's something that I'm not going to have to worry about anymore, when that is the furthest thing from the truth. Because as long as we're living and interacting with other folks, we're going to have a lot of these things. We're all having these similar experiences. And next time it might be someone else. The other time it might be you, or maybe someone else, that. And those experiences, you have them, you grow from them, and then you're able to like share with someone else, to help them navigate it, possibly. So, yeah. But I love that part of it, because you want to feel like you are moving forward, and I think that was the biggest thing for me. At a certain point I just felt stuck, and I was just like, I don't like it. I don't like it here. Like, I don't like this place, that I'm at. I don't see any progression, and I'm all about like progression and development. So I'm like, what is this? Like, what is this place? Let me out of here.
Thank you for even acknowledging that, right? Because I think there's somebody out there who's probably even feeling stuck as well. But I think sometimes we can misdiagnose the seasons that we're in. So especially as individuals who are constantly on the go, always about forward progression, always movement. When life sits us down, we start to beat ourselves up. And so maybe even reframing the way that we look at certain seasons, rather than looking at it as like a place of being stuck. Maybe it's just a place of rest. Maybe it's a place, or maybe an opportunity for us to reconnect with ourselves. Maybe it's a place for us to be able to sit down and like widen up the scope, so that we can look at the entire picture and strategize for what's next. Sometimes it's not necessarily even like a place of stagnation. It's just a place of rest.
Right. Like you need to sit down right now. And no, you're right. Cause there's two angles to that thing. Well, maybe more. Sometimes it is that you just feeling, like stuck and you need a break. Right. And then some other times it's for you to get just uncomfortable enough to go and do that thing that you are supposed to, maybe even go build that business. And sometimes we got to get that way, because a lot of times we'll be like, oh, okay, this is fine. This will do. And it's just like, no, somebody is waiting on you to create, this business, they're waiting on you to go become this speaker. They're waiting on you, and you got to get just comfortable enough to make that transformation. Right.
Absolutely. Like to refer to it as a divine redirection. That sometimes there are these divine interruptions that will redirect us to something different, something that we're actually supposed to be doing. Like even, Bible story time, like Moses, he was minding his own business, looking after the flock. Okay. And then he just happened to see this glowing thing out of like the crevice. And he walked in and he saw this burning bush, and he had a full encounter with God. And so there are times where we are literally minding our own business and like destiny collides with us. But sometimes that destiny collision comes from a place of pain, a place of like interruption that we did not experience or maybe even consider what even happened, you know?
That's so true. So speaking of those interruptions, I just thought, just that even that example that you were giving about Moses, it just so powerful. We were studying that not too long ago, and so I gained a lot of value from Moses' story. But I wanted to ask you about, since you specialize, in that area, it's one of the areas that you specialize. What can you tell us? Can you tell us why grief can be so powerful and even change your mindset about how you look at things?
Yeah, so like we talked about, grief is your relation to a particular loss. This is your physical, mental, and emotional, and sometimes even spiritual relationship to a particular loss. And the reason why grief is so powerful is because anytime we lose a thing, it's not done in silos. We lose a sense of self. We lose a sense of time. Sometimes we even like lose a concept of our relationship. So even when we are giving ourselves the opportunity to grieve, it helps us to kind of like turn over a new leaf per se. I like to kind of think of like with rest, right? Anytime we go to sleep, we're turning over new cells in our brain, right? Or maybe even when anytime we are going to go to what's it call it, esthetician, they're turning over new cells on the skin. So giving yourself the opportunity to grieve helps to peel back the things that are keeping you stuck emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So giving yourself the opportunity to release that.
Yeah, that's so good. Just processing that is just power, in itself. Because once you get past that place, you're just like, wow, like I made it. It's kind of like that. You got to go through some things, sometimes to build you into the person that you're meant to be. And it ain't gonna be easy. And life is not, but it can be rewarding at the once you get to the other side of it. It's that growth and that learning. So anytime we're doing that learning, I think that that's always a benefit as well. So yeah. I wanted to ask you if you had any last words or of advice for folks who are out there and they're just stuck or they feel like they're stuck. Well, we won't use that because just like you said, sometimes it's something else, but they're just in a bad place and haven't really, processed what's going on, what things that they may need to grieve.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I definitely encourage individuals to allow themselves to be human. I think, like we talked about earlier, sometimes we will lean into suppressing our emotions, rejecting our emotions, not wanting to work through our emotions. But understand that you are not alone. I know we were talking about some of the symptoms of depression includes like withdrawing and isolating. And so whenever we are experiencing some form of loss of any magnitude, the natural inclination is to like retreat and to try to like withdraw within yourself. Yes, create time for yourself to recalibrate, to reconfigure so that you can be able to like turn down the noise, because honestly, it can be a lot. You're dealing with the phone calls, you're dealing with the text messages, you're dealing with like all of the planning of the passing of the person and all the like things that come with it that we really don't expect, like family planning, life planning, estate planning, having those difficult conversations with family, maybe even arguing with family, trying to look into how to cancel policies, or maybe even like sending the correct documentation to the right person. It's a whole gambit that comes with like the loss of a person. And I think also too, even when we're thinking about the loss of a job or anything else. It's not just the actual loss, it's everything, every system that comes with the loss.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm really emphasizing, allow yourself to be human, take it one day at a time. Do not be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
There are spaces specifically for you, even if you're not going into therapy, leveraging some wellness practices for you to be able to emote and to showcase emotion, to sit with it, to honor your emotions. And I want everybody to understand that you, like, this too shall pass. This too
Right.
shall pass. So
Yeah.
just hoping the best for you and understanding that, like, you're not alone and you're seen and you're heard.
Right. No, thank you. That was so good. I think one of the parts that you had mentioned that I think that is something that we lose sight of is that it isn't just the thing, that you lost. It's everything else that's attached to that. So for example, when you mentioned the job, it's just like, it's not just the job, you might not even like those people. No, but it pays your bills, and now you're thinking, oh, okay, I can't go here. I can't, I'm going to have to like rearrange some things. I'm going to let this person down. Maybe I'm going to let my child down because I promised that they were going to be able to go to Disney World and we were going to spend a week there. Now we can't do that because we can't afford to just send money out the house after losing this job, and just like the whole process of looking for a new job, or maybe there was a benefit with this job that was going to help pay for school, or get tuition reimbursement, things like that. And so there's so many things that are attached to it, and you gotta mourn all of those things that are now being lost. And one that I think is pretty interesting, I just wanted to mention really quick, is sometimes with friendships. Sometimes with friendships, you may have a situation where the friendship needs to end because it's toxic, right? But it wasn't all toxic, right? And you love that person.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't get to process the things, process the loss of that friend or that person, because you might want to talk about it. And then you have people in your life that are like, girl, you better than me. Girl, like, why are you even thinking about that person? Like, they did you like this. It's just like, yeah. And then there's like shame that you still love them. You know what I mean? Like, this is my friend. We used to go here on Saturdays. We used to do this on Fridays. We used to just midweek, watch, our shows together. And you know what I mean? Like, and you have all these memories. And so you're thinking about those things, that those things are what's hurting you, and not necessarily, the thing that they did that made you not want to be their friend anymore, or that, you came to terms that you had to end the relationship. That hurts, but it hurts more the loss of all of the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for creating space for that. I think that's the other thing to focus on, is giving yourself the opportunity to live in the both and, like you mentioned, the both and that multiple truths exist. So the loss of a thing, even if you hated that job, the job still paid the bills. You had a nice cozy office, or maybe even you had that amazing coworker who used to bring donuts for you every Monday. There were aspects and attributes of the person, or maybe even the opportunity, or like the location, whatever, that really brought joy and happiness
Right.
to your life.
Exactly.
If it was very burdensome, you probably wouldn't have held on to it, or you wouldn't be grieving it so significantly.
Right.
And so acknowledging that multiple truths can exist. Yes, you're no longer in relation with that friend, or that ex-friend, but you guys still had a routine going. And so I'm not beating yourself up for the fact that you feel all these various emotions. It is okay. It is okay. You can be disappointed and grateful at the same time. You can
I love
be
that.
annoyed and happy at the same time. You can be optimistic and still grieve at the same time. So please understand. Please allow yourself to be to not have to be in this box. Okay.
Right.
Don't force yourself into having to choose either or. So allow yourself to just be like your full authentic human self.
I love it. I love it. That's so good. And that's such a great note for us to end it on. I appreciate you so much for taking out the time. I know you're busy, girl. You're doing the Lord's work here. And I'm so grateful that you are. I was thinking the other day, I seen one of your posts and I'm just like, this girl could actually do marketing and some other things because her posts be looking like professional commercials. No, legit. I'm like, this is good.
I appreciate you.
Watch you now. You're gonna go back and look because that last one you posted, I was like, this looks so good. It looks like something that you be watching on TV. I was like,
oh, that's dope. Yeah.
It's so polished. But no, I thank you so much. And I just look forward to seeing all of the amazing things that God is going to do through you because he's definitely using you and you are in your purpose. I mean, you are just doing it out here. And I'm sure many others can say the same, about you. So thank you so much for being you. I appreciate you. And I'm so grateful that you came on to the show tonight and gave us some things to reflect on and just, I'm going to look back, as well. All of my shows, I'm just like, gosh, there's some good stuff and there's some points to reference. And that's the point of doing this is that you always, have it. As long as there's
absolutely. Shout out to you, V, as always. Thank you so much for being invested in people's growth and transformation. Thank you for creating this amazing platform. I think there's so many ways to look at wholeness, and you just make sure that people incorporate their emotions and give them the space to actually like feel authentically. So thank you for all that you do because you're doing the Lord's work too.
No, thank you. I'm trying. Sometimes you got to snatch me up.
Some people you got to do it to us all. That's all good.
Yes. And to our audience, thank you guys so much for just holding us down and always, just coming through. And I hope that everything that you guys heard tonight was a blessing. And if you haven't already, skim through, you may have missed a couple of episodes. Check them out. And we'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of Transforming with Me. And also, I wanted to go ahead and say for you to let the people know how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on all social media platforms at Legacy SPKS. You can also reach out and get your free mental health plan at mentalhealthgoals.com. So if you have any concerns or you're trying to like increase insight or trying to figure out what's next or learn how to find the right therapist, you can head over to mentalhealthgoals.com to obtain your free mental health plan. And I'm around. So yeah, just hit me up in the DMs. You can always reach me, like I said, at Legacy SPKS on all social media platforms. And once again, my name is Sierra Hillsman, licensed professional counselor, and I look forward to connecting with you.
Yes. And just remember, all of her information will be in the description. So if you're watching this video, you can go into the description and just click on the links for everyone who might be a little lazy, because sometimes I am. You just can click on the link and it'll take you right to the website or to her Instagram, whatever it is that is listed there. You'll be able to just go right on into it and find her and follow Miss Sierra Hilton. So thank you guys all again. You guys have a wonderful night and a safe weekend. No, we're actually going to be going back into the work week. So enjoy that, prepare, get rested. I know I will. All right. Well, have a great night.